Welcome back to jwforwardcast, the show that helps former Jehovah's Witnesses pick up the pieces, put them back together, and turn them into something awesome. So, welcome back to the show. My name is Covert Fade. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, but now I'm free. Today's show is going to be a Q&A. Alice Cheshire and myself will be answering a listener question. But before we jump into that, we just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. So first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to some very kind new patrons who are supporting the show over at patreon.com/covertfade. A huge thank you to Justin Wallace, Matthew Smiley, and Gail Myers. And Gail asked me to shout her name so loud that the elders would come visiting. So, Gail Myers! There, I hope that was loud enough. Apologies if anyone just lost their eardrums there. So yeah, Justin, Matthew, Gail, thank you so much for your kind support. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so on patreon.com. And in return for your support, which can be as little as $1 a month, you'll get access to all sorts of cool stuff, including extra podcast episodes, access to Ask Me Anything episodes. And there's actually there's a new Ask Me Anything that went up for May, which is now available there. And there'll be a new episode of The Covert Files, which is a podcast that's basically more about me and my life and just interesting little bits of Covert Fade trivia, which is on there for patrons as well. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who's been leaving us reviews on iTunes or whatever podcast software you use to listen to the show. A star rating or a written iTunes review is actually a massive help to us because it boosts us up the algorithm and makes it easier for more people to find the show. So huge thank you to everyone. And as always, if someone leaves a new written review on iTunes, I'll read it out on the show. So yeah, leave us your reviews and also give us feedback there if you think there's something we could be doing better, because we're always looking to improve. And lastly, also hello to everyone who's subscribed to us on the Covert Fade YouTube channel. I think we're at 662 subscribers on YouTube. So yeah, thank you for your support, and I'm looking forward to the little celebration we'll have when we hit our first 1,000. So that brings us to the end of the housekeeping, and now, without further ado, I give you Alice Cheshire and myself answering a listener question. Hope you enjoy the show. So, welcome back to another question and answer session of JW Forwardcast, the show where we answer your exJW related questions. My name is Covert Fade, and I'm here today with former Jehovah's Witness and life coach, Alice Cheshire.
Hello.
How are you, Alice?
I'm very, very well.
Excellent. So, we're going to get straight into the question today, which comes from Ronnie. And Ronnie asked this question on Twitter. They tweeted at the Alice Chesh and at Covert Fade, which is where you can find us on Twitter, and said, "What is one way to increase activism behind the scenes? I have faced and still have contact with 2 in-family members." Now, there's actually 2 ways to take this question. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I should have tweeted you for clarification, and I didn't, because I thought this question meant one thing, and Alice read it and thought it meant another. So just to be sure, we're going to answer both versions of the question we think you might be asking.
We're just going to do both.
We're going to do both. So you're getting
2
for the price of one. Exactly. You can't say you get a fantastic, free deal on this free podcast. It's a bog off. It's a buy one, get one free. Tweet one, get one free. Twog off. Tweet one, twog off. Yeah, acronyms are fun. So the question is, what is one way to increase activism behind the scenes? I have faced and still have contact with 2 family members.
It's faded, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I have faded. I have faded. So the question I thought you were asking, and this is my answer, is you want to know about how to do some activism with your family who are still in. You're faded, but you want to know how to maybe do some activism, maybe wake them up a little bit, help them to get out of the cult. So my advice would be, you're going to have to be very careful. If this is what you were thinking, it's possible, but you're going to have to do this very carefully. Any kind of full frontal assault, when you sort of, turn up waving a copy of Crisis of Conscience and the findings of the Royal Commission in their face, that's not going to work. That's essentially charging a machine gun nest, and you're going to get shot down. they will just default into it's all apostate lies, and they'll feel uncomfortable in your presence. They'll feel upset in your presence. And people who are uncomfortable and upset are not prone to changing their mind on things. The key thing with waking up from the Jehovah's Witnesses is you kind of have to be ready, and you have to change your own mind. And that can be a gradual process. So I think this is more about being there and being ready for your family when they do start to have questions, and maybe subtly helping them along a little bit. On the second episode we ever had on jwforwardcast, I interviewed Lloyd Evans. And he's on he's got a YouTube channel, which is CEDA's JW Survey. And obviously he runs the JW Survey website. And it was quite interesting. He left the religion first and his wife left later. Now, he was able to help his wife wake up. And the way he did it is he didn't sort of throw piles of inverted commas apostate information at her. He basically just let her know that if she had any questions, she could approach him, but he wasn't going to force it on her. And gradually, bit by bit, because he was staying true to his word and he wasn't, constantly throwing inverted commas apostate information into her face, she started to ask him questions. And it was a very gradual thing. And of course, as we know, ultimately she woke up. But I think there's no one perfect way. And some people do have one experience that just wakes them up. But I think your best bet is to keep those bounds of communication open, be respectful of them. Don't mock their religion. Don't try and turn every opportunity into a chance to talk about the faults in the JW religion, because then you're a JW. Because you know how annoying it is when JWs try and use every single chance to talk about their religion? Yeah, don't do that. Just be there. Keep lines of communication open, and maybe let them know that if they ever have questions, you're more than happy to talk about it, but you don't want to upset them. And maybe let it slip. Maybe the one thing you can let, if it ever comes up, is you can sort of say, well, I left because of new information that came to light. Or let them know that you left not because you couldn't take it anymore, but because you came to the conclusion based on evidence that it wasn't true, and just leave it there. And then as things go along, they might know they can come to you and ask little questions. And then little questions become more questions. And as time goes on, that builds, and then suddenly they're asking you serious questions. That would be my answer to the question. But Alice, you thought a different question was being asked, and so you have a different answer.
Yeah, so I don't know which of these it is. And Ronnie, if you could let us know which one of us is right, that would be great.
Because we're probably both wrong. In which case, let us know and we'll record another episode answering the question you actually meant to ask. Yeah, and I'm an idiot for not clarifying this with you before we recorded the episode.
But the way I read this question was about activism in the wider sense. So activism, not just with our own individual family members who are still in, but, the wider world of activism, as... blog posts and Twitter and podcasts and all that sort of stuff. That's how I read this question. And as I say, it's possible that this is wrong, but we're going to do both, and then just let us know which of us is right, which of us is wrong, and if neither of us is right, then apologies, and we'll do another one. So for people who have faded, and the one thing I will say is I really understand why. When you faded, you want to somehow tell the world. You want to get it out there and help other people. And that's a really, really natural and normal thing. And that's, I think, what drives the majority of activists, is that they can't not talk about it. Now that they've seen the man behind the curtain, now that they know the truth, the real truth, the truth about the truth, they need to tell other people. So the first thing I would say is, and this is similar to what Covert was saying, you do need to be very careful. Excuse me, frog in my throat. I'll start that again. So the first thing I would say is the same as what Covert was saying. You do need to be very careful about this. Now, it's one of those things where chances are, if you put some stuff out there, or if you set up a Twitter account or whatever under your real name, maybe nothing would come of it. Maybe it would be okay, but the chances are you could get identified as somebody who is actively speaking against the religion. And that is the one thing that the governing body, the org, JWs find worse than anything else you could possibly do is speaking actively, publicly against the religion. So first things first, be really, really careful. If you then want to publicly start talking about it, I would suggest doing what Covert and myself and many, many others have done. Find yourself a pseudonym. Use the pseudonym. Twitter, you can set up yourself under a different name. Even Facebook have a thing where they say that you're not allowed to use false names. But if you don't use a reasonable name, how are they ever going to know? So make sure that you are using a name that isn't in any way going to be associated with you. The other thing I would say is if you want to start doing some activism work in that wider environment, you don't have to do everything all at once. You don't have to shoot the lights out. Some people like writing articles and doing podcasts and getting really, really involved in it. You may not want to do that, particularly to start with, but you can do your own little thing. You can retweet stuff on Twitter. You can add comments. You can get involved. You can help other people. You can get involved in conversations online, the wonders of social media. Just slowly start dipping your toes in the water. It's also something that might feel really, really strange to start with because even after we faded, it took me more than 10 years after I left the cult to then decide that I wanted to actually start getting involved in some activism, partly because it took me that long to kind of deal with everything that had happened and come out the other side. But also, I didn't know where to start. And also, there was still for a very long time that kind of thing at the back of my head that I was somehow sinning by speaking out against the Watchtower, And I'm sure a lot of people can relate that when you first start to get those inklings of waking up, the first time you click on an apostate, inverted commas, website, oh my God. And, even though you don't believe anymore, really, you still have this thing inside you that you're somehow sinning. So go slow, go careful, just slowly dip your toe. Don't do anything that makes you uncomfortable to start with. But even something as simple as getting yourself a Twitter account and starting to retweet things. Follow some activists that you like, that speak to you. And the other thing to say is that not all activists speak to everyone. There's loads of different people out there. Some you're going to like more than others. Some you're going to gel with more than others. There are going to be people who you listen to or you read and you think, they're just not my kind of people. They're not talking my language. And that's fine. We don't have to like everybody. So just explore. Start slowly getting involved. And then if you do decide that you want to take a bit more of an active role, start reaching out to some people that you follow and that you like working with. I know that Lloyd and the JW survey team, they're always looking for people to help out, to maybe write articles and to get involved and reach out to people who are doing podcasts, if you want to share your story. People are always looking to bring people in and share people's thoughts and share people's stories. So don't be afraid to reach out, but make sure that you're doing it in line with what you want to do and at your own pace. And the most important thing, and I can't stress this enough, is just make sure that you are doing it under a pseudonym and don't give out any information that could identify you.
Yeah. So those are the two answers to the two different questions. So Ronnie, hopefully we've answered one of them usefully. And like I said, if we didn't hit either of them correctly, let us know. And I promise you, we will both sit down and we will record an answer to the question you actually wanted us to ask. But thank you. If you guys have got any other questions you'd like us to answer, you can tweet them at covertfade or at the Alice Chesh. You can send them in to jwforwardcast@gmail.com, or you can learn the ancient art of Native American smoke signaling, set fire to something, and send your communication into the sky with smoke. No, only kidding. That would be kind of cool, though.
Yeah, I feel like, to find your New World Translation and start that as the
Holy smokes, Batman. Yeah, so there you go. So thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.